Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. My name is Mazwe Majola from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We are starting our session. We are having a lovely session tonight with a powerful speaker. We are so looking forward to engage our speaker and to learn from him. I will introduce him shortly, but how wonderful it is to assemble together again, as we always do on Wednesdays evening, to sharpen each other, to learn from each other. As we always say, that we gather here every Wednesdays to learn from each other, to empower each other, to correct each other as leaders and admonish each other wherever possible. We are leaders in leadership. We develop leaders. We produce world-class leaders. We believe that leadership is a journey. Leadership is not a destination. Therefore, it's important to learn from each other as we always do every Wednesdays. I will be introducing our guest speaker tonight shortly, but a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. If you've never been with us before, you are so welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in. And we love you to enjoy yourselves and to participate as well, because would love to hear from you and would love to learn from you. So do not feel shy. Don't be shy. Don't withdraw. We would like to learn from you. And welcome to our regulars, to our members. I see all of you who are here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We always learn from each other colleagues, and that is why we always come here on the Wednesdays, because we value these sessions a lot. We've grown together as we've been meeting every Wednesdays to learn from each other. Tonight, we are discussing a very important topic. We are discussing the state of leadership in our country. The state of leadership in South Africa. What is happening in our land? What is happening in our country? Well, what is the state of leadership? We hear others, they are saying we are led by an autopilot. We hear others, they're saying it seems like there's no leadership in our country. Do we have leaders? Or, of course, those who are in charge, are they leading us? Are they discharging their responsibilities as our leaders in our country? So tonight we'll be dealing with that question, and then we'll be led by our speaker, who will be giving us his presentation. Then after that, we will engage him and we'll engage each other. So I don't want to waste any time, because we like to give him an ample time so that he can really engage us and empower us. We are hosting tonight my brother, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, and we are so glad that in his tight schedule, he has availed himself. He's very busy. Today he's been busy the whole day. So I'm so humbled really that in his tight schedule, he has managed to fit us in. And the beauty is that he knows this platform. He's familiar with this platform. He has addressed us before, and we are so encouraged, and we learned a lot from him last time. Hence, we have asked him to come again because we know what he's capable of. So Bheki Mngomezulu is a political analyst. We know him in his analysis, whether in radio or in TV or newspapers, in his articles that he has written. We've learned a lot from him. He is the professor of political science at the Western Cape University in obviously in Cape Town. So he's a leader, he's a well-known speaker. As I'm saying that in this country, so many people have used him. And we are so glad that he's with us again tonight. My brother, Prof, would like to give to you now to address us. And once again, thank you so much, my brother, for availing yourself. We are so excited and we are so looking forward to hear from you. Over to you, Prof. Mngomezulu. Over to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Prof. Majola, for these very kind words. I'm deeply humbled by the introduction. And yes, indeed, I'm a tired man. The ANC's conference in KwaZulu-Natal kept me very busy. At one point, I went to bed at 4 a.m. and I was up again at 6 a.m. because the media was on my case on a number of issues. I offended a lot of people in the process, of course, but these things have to be done in one way or the other. Let's see if I can share. If not, I'll ask that you assist me from your side. Oh yeah, it says it's disabled from my side. So if you can please share from your side. I have another gadget on the other side. I'll be checking from there, and then we can just show it from your side, Prof.
I've allowed you the share screen, my brother. Try it again.
Okay. I think the problem is with my device, because when I go to share screen, it's supposed to allow me to then open my files on my desktop, but it doesn't. Okay, let's see. No. Prof, it's refusing to, because it's supposed to take me straight to my files and then I can get it from my desktop, but it's not allowing me to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe if someone can try from your side to save time, I'll be reading from the other gadget, if that is okay, Prof.
Did you email to me?
Yes, I sent it to you together with the short bio on WhatsApp.
Okay, I suggest that you continue, Prof, while we're still trying to access that document. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, no problem, Prof. Okay,
yeah, you continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, colleagues, without wasting any time, I'll go straight to it. As Prof has just indicated, the title of my presentation today is the State of Leadership in South Africa. And then I added a subtitle, Towards Finding Solutions. And then when we do get the document, I will skip the outline part, and then we'll go straight to the introductory remarks, where I say that I would like to begin by thanking Prof for the invitation, for which I'm deeply humbled. And I also indicate that it's not the first time, as Prof has just said, for me to be here. I would have wanted to be with you colleagues every Wednesday, but unfortunately, yeah, my schedule has been very crazy lately. And then the reality of the matter is that South Africa currently faces a number of challenges. And here I mention a couple of them. One is the triple challenge of inequality, poverty, and unemployment. We have also the ailing economy. We have intermittent power cuts, commonly referred to as load shedding. And then we also have a constantly increasing petrol prices, which of course has its own ramifications in a number of areas of our lives. And then of course, high crime levels have reached an unprecedented level, and the list goes on and on and on. So basically the reality then is that we are having these challenges. The question then is, why are we having these challenges? Among the responses we can bring forth is that we have natural causes, like for example, unpredictable weather patterns, which results either in drought or in floods, as we've seen recently in the case of KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and then of course other parts of the country. So these are just, natural challenges which have nothing to do with leadership. But then the response to these challenges then invokes the leadership concept. Then another one, of course, is that We also have health pandemics like the COVID-19 pandemic, which we're still trying to understand as it wanes off. Hopefully, it's not going to come back. So at the center of all of these challenges is the caliber of our leaders, which is basically my focal point. So as much as the issues I've just outlined are natural or of natural causes, the reality of the matter is our leaders have not responded in the manner they should. And in some instances, some of these challenges should not have arisen in the first place if our leaders were doing what they are supposed to do. So in this session, I'm doing just two things. One, I look at the state of leadership in South Africa, and then secondly, I look at possible strategies that could be employed in order to try and address the situation. Now, let's go straight to this concept, this leadership, which is the concept that we're dealing with. Leadership encompasses a number of things, which of course includes one's ability to influence others. So the understanding is that if one is a leader, that person is able to influence others. You have other scholars then who would argue that, and I quote, like love, leadership is universally desired, but difficult to explain explicitly, end of quote. So basically then it means that when we look at leadership from that vantage point, we argue that just like love, it's a difficult concept to try and understand because with love, you cannot define it to the fullest. You just define it in a particular context. Then others will also try to define it in their own way. So leadership is about a couple of things. One is about inspiring a shared vision. I'm now on page 4. So it's about inspiring a shared vision, enabling others to act and modeling the way, and also encouraging the heart. So basically then it means that leadership involves a lot of things which will then take us forward, either as a collective, in the case of a nation, in this case South Africa, or a broader collective as a continent or as a globe. So basically then it means that if I'm a leader, I have to inspire, I must have a vision, and then of course I must lead the way. I must show others how things are done, and then they will follow what I'm doing. So leadership has evolved then over time. That is the historical context that I'm referring to now. Leadership has evolved over time. Initially in the 1800s up to the 1930s, the emphasis tended to be on two concepts. One was control, and then the other one was centralization. In other words, a centralization of power. So initially then it means that a leadership was understood in that context. If you were a leader, you had to control others. If you were a leader, you had to have power concentrated in you and nobody else. So in other words, you monopolize power. And this then led to the notion of the great man theory, which espoused the view that leaders are born, they are not made. In other words, if you are not born a leader, then you cannot be a leader, in as far as that understanding is concerned. However, with the passage of time, this notion had to change, and then people started looking at leadership from a different context. So in the 1940s, therefore, the issue of the individual then came into the picture. So so that leadership was then considered differently. You then had two types of leaders. There were those who were said to be associated with persuasion, so leadership by persuasion, and then leadership by coercion. So we'll have two types of leaders. One of the leaders would persuade people to follow him or her, and then the other one would coerce people to follow him or her. So in other words, it wouldn't necessarily be as defined in the 1800s to the 1930s, whereby you are born a leader. You had to prove yourself to be a leader, and once you earned the tag of being a leader, you then either had to persuade people to follow you, or you had to coerce them to follow you. Then effective leadership, in essence, requires a lot of things, amongst which are the following. It's insight. If you are a leader, you have to have an insight. And then, of course, good organization. A leader who is disorganized, of course, will lose followers. That is a given. And then, of course, constant communication. Some leaders talk to themselves, which is why, for instance, when Prof was making introductory remarks, he basically alluded to this point that if you are a leader and only listen to yourself, chances are you are not going to lead properly. So there must be constant communication between the leader and the followers. And then, of course, there must be self-awareness. If I'm a leader and I'm not aware that now I've derailed or people are complaining or my followers are no longer happy with me, I'll just keep moving forward, not knowing that I'm now moving alone because I've left everybody behind. So there is a link then between leadership and power, in the sense that some leaders would insist that power belongs to them and them alone. And then how one uses this power then will define the kind of a leader that one is. Now, let's move to the characteristics of a good leader, because not all leaders are good, others are good, others are bad. So I've done this by borrowing an idea from one of the scholars who basically looks at the first letter and then looks at what it means in this concept, leadership. Let's start with L. L basically means that if you are a leader, you have to listen. If you are a leader and you don't listen, you have ceased to be a leader and become something else for which then you don't have a name at the moment. And then the second one, that is E, it stands for enthusiasm. A leader who is not enthusiastic will therefore not encourage or motivate the followers. So a leader then has to have enthusiasm. And then the A stands for aspiring. A leader who doesn't aspire for anything better, then of course that person can't be a leader. So a leader must aspire for something. And then we have D, which means a leader must be decisive. I've become notorious on this one because I've confronted leaders asking them not to move with the flow, as it were, asking them to be decisive. I said, you must have something that you believe in, and you must market that idea or that belief, and then people will make a determination whether to follow you or not. So a leader who is not decisive then is a problematic one. Then the next one, E, that is empower or encourage. A leader who doesn't empower followers, a leader who doesn't encourage followers is not a real leader, because then it means that followers will be disempowered and then they will not be encouraged. Chances are they will look for others to follow, because it means that the person they were following, thinking was a leader, is no longer a leader. Then they'll look for somebody else. Then the next one is R, which basically means responsible. A leader has to be responsible. If I'm a leader and I'm not responsible for whatever thing, I might be responsible for my actions, I must be responsible for my ill decisions, whatever I'm doing as a leader, I have to be responsible. And then the next one is S, a leader has to be supportive. A leader who doesn't support followers runs the risk of losing those supporters, so that they go to someone else who's going to give them the support that they need. And then most importantly is H, a leader has to be humble. A leader who doesn't humble himself or herself will definitely face some challenges. Even in the Bible will tell you that you have to humble yourself before God, then he will lift you up. Then similarly, as a leader, you humble yourself before your followers, and then they are the ones who are going to elevate you. But then if I don't humble myself, I put myself up there at the top, chances are my followers will bring me down. So then a leader has to humble himself or herself. And then the next one is I, a leader has to inspire. A leader who doesn't inspire followers, then of course runs the risk of losing those followers to someone else who is going to inspire them and then make them feel important and feel valued. Then the last one is P, which is plan. A leader has to plan. If I'm a leader and I don't plan what I do and I just do it and say, I will see what happens or I'll see what comes up, then it means I'm not a leader, because it means I'm at the same level as my followers. And in some instances, my followers are even better than me because they can anticipate what is likely to happen. Then let's go to the next page, which is not going to have much, basically trying to summarize what I was saying. That if I'm a leader, one thing that I need to bear in mind is that I am a leader, I have followers, and then the two of us are bound by one thing, and that is a relationship. In other words, there has to be a relationship between the leader and the follower, because once that relationship is negatively affected, chances are that particular arrangement is going to cease to exist, because there is no relationship between the leader and the follower. Now, as I draw towards the end, Program Director, we go to slide 7. we now look at what is destroying our leadership in South Africa, which is basically the main question that we're trying to address here. There are a number of things. I just identified a few of them. One is entitlement. Some of our leaders have this sense of entitlement. Once they are elected into a position, it's as if they own that position. You'll hear people in certain political parties, for example, saying that they don't want any outsider to give them a view because this is their party. So they own the party. Their party is their position, is their whatever. So this sense of entitlement then leads to basically a leader not being accepted by the followers, because this sense of entitlement in some instances projects or portrays the leader as someone who is out there, and then the followers are down there, and they just have to toe the line if they still want to be his or her followers. The next one is patronage. In most cases, we talk about patronage politics, whereby you find that people are following an individual, even if that individual has no substance. The individual is just making a lot of noise, political rhetoric, and then people follow that person. And then it doesn't matter which direction the person is going, they'll still follow that person anyway because of a patronage and nothing else. And then others, of course, will do so because they fear the individual. Others will do so because the individual has bribed them. There could be many other reasons. But then patronage then becomes a problem, which is basically giving us the kind of leaders that we currently have. The next one is arrogance. This one is very bad. Normally, we talk about political arrogance, whereby our leaders don't want to be advised by others. It's as if they are omniscient and they know everything. The reality of the matter is we learn from one another. I was telling others when I was talking during the day that I may be a grade 10 learner, but there is something I can learn from a grade R kid, simply because we learn until we die. So this arrogance then is killing our leaders, because some of our leaders have no knowledge even about the organizations they belong to. They don't even understand the policies of those organizations. During elections, they don't even understand the manifestos of those organizations. But the moment you come with an idea, then they become arrogant and then they just shut you down. So that becomes a problem, because next time when I see a leader who is arrogant, going astray, there is no way that I can advise that person because of this arrogance. So this is what is killing then our country. The next one is egotism. There are leaders who only think about themselves and nobody else. So which means that they don't even think about the same organization they are members of, and they don't think about the other members of the organization. They don't even think about the followers. They don't even think about the electorate, this is the voters who put them there. So this, egotism then becomes a problem. Some will refer to leaders doing things for self-aggrandizement. So it's just all about themselves and nobody else. Then it becomes a problem, because even if there are funds that have become available in the party, they only chow the money, as some boys would say. So in other words, they use the money for their own purposes, not for the purposes of the party or the organization, not for the purposes of the country, not for the purposes of the followers, but for them and them only. Once they've had enough, then they'll share the money with their friends, they'll share the money with their family members, and then society will continue to suffer. And then, of course, members of that party will also continue to suffer. The next one is equally important, that is ignorance. I've alluded to this point earlier on, that not all our leaders are knowledgeable even about their own political parties. Even if you go to the private sector, not all CEOs are knowledgeable. Some of them may have become CEOs just because they happen to be at the right place at the right time. In another event that where I was asked to do a presentation last week, I cited the late president of Angola, President José dos Santos. He was frank about it. He said, I became a president by mistake, and people didn't understand him until he explained that his predecessor, who passed on in 1979, dying from cancer. Coincidentally, this one also is said to have died of cancer. So he said, when he passed on, I was identified as someone who could lead the MPLA, not because I was the best candidate, but because the members of my party felt that I was soft-spoken, I was not going to be a problem to them, I was not going to page anyone, then I got the position. So he became a president by default, but with him, he was honest about it. Others don't want to do that. So there are people who then become leaders, even of political parties or of private companies, but then you find that they don't have the knowledge they need about those particular organizations over which they preside because of this ignorance. Then those who are smart, they know how they got into positions, and then they try to capacitate themselves. Others remain the way they were when they started. They remain ignorant until they leave. And this becomes a problem. You can see this when there are public debates. You can see this during elections. You can see this when they are supposed to put together manifestos. Then, of course, you can tell this one is a leader, this one is definitely not. So ignorance then becomes a problem. Then another one is lack of confidence. I've seen this several times because if a leader lacks confidence, then that leader becomes defensive. You make a general comment which is not directed at the leader, then the leader becomes defensive. It's as if you are attacking that particular person directly, when in fact you are making a general statement either about the leadership, not the leader, but leadership in general, and then the person takes offense because of a lack of confidence. And then, of course, everybody else makes a point, oh, this one is attacking me, this one wants my position, and so on and so forth. And then the last part one is inactive civil society. As a civil society, we also contribute to this, because if we're not active, if we're not vocal, if we don't raise issues, then these leaders become complacent. They say, it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter what I don't do, I will still survive anyway, because the people I'm leading, the people who vote for me, will still continue voting for me, because the citizenry or the electorate or the civil society is not as active as it is supposed to be. And then the last one is the electoral system. This one is very critical. I've made a proposal on this one, saying that our electoral system is failing us in a way, because you find that because we use the party system. Now, what happens is that if, for example, Professor Majola and I are contesting an election, Professor Majola is in party A, I'm in party B, and then what will happen there is that people who like party A will vote for party A even if they don't like Professor Majola. The same will happen with me. If they like party B, they'll vote for party B even if they don't like me. So then I will become a leader. Professor Majola will become a leader simply because of our electoral system. And then once we occupy those positions, then it becomes a problem, because it means that we got into those positions not because we had the requisite skills and knowledge, but because the parties we come from are liked by the electorate or are liked by the voters. So then that becomes a problem, because the electoral system produces the kinds of leaders that don't deserve to be in those positions. Then we are stuck with those leaders just because we like our political parties. Now, let's conclude then by looking at some possible strategies that we can employ to try and address at least some of these challenges, not all of them. Okay. The first one is that the first point to make is that we have a choice between two things. One, we can effect changes in a subtle manner, or we can be direct and then make sure that we enforce leadership change. So the choice is ours. We can decide what to do. The reality of the matter is that leaders and followers should have a shared vision. If there is no shared vision, the leader will pull this side and the followers will pull the other side. And that becomes a problem. So it means that if we're to address some of the challenges I've just outlined, we have to make sure that those who are leaders and those who are followers read from the same hymn book, because if that doesn't happen, then that is the recipe for disaster. Number two, leaders can be capacitated either academically or by exposure. There are leaders who assumed positions of power, not necessarily understanding a lot, but then in the process, because of this exposure to other partners elsewhere, then they capacitated themselves, then they became better leaders. Others did so through education, further education, trying to understand different political systems, trying to understand different leadership styles, trying to understand different companies in the case of a private sector, and so on and so forth. So it means then that our leaders, that is in the South African context, if they are to change from the manner in which we see them, we view them, one of the things they need to do is to capacitate themselves either academically or by exposure by making sure that they see what others are doing and how they do things and then learn from that. The next one is that politicians should be made aware that they do not own political parties. This is a problem because in 2019, I had a serious problem with one of the leaders of political parties, and I was told on the face that no, Mngomezulu cannot talk about this political party because it doesn't belong to you and you're not a member of this party. So basically, the understanding there was that I own this political party and you have nothing to tell me. This becomes a problem then, because even if the leader is derailed, there is no way that you can advise that leader, because the understanding is that I own this political party, or I own this particular institution, or I own this company. When in fact you are a leader, long after you are gone, the company will remain. Long after you are gone, the political party will remain. So basically, you don't own it. So this should be made clear then to our politicians that they don't own political parties. They're just members or they are leaders only for now. And next time somebody else is going to ascend the stage, and then in their case, they will have descended or they've exited the stage, as it were. The next point is that followers can desert leaders. And this can happen either through resignations or ditching a political party, or even not voting, like we saw in 2021, when the majority of the people decided not to vote. So it means there is something that can be done. If we try to reason with our leaders and they don't meet us halfway, one of the options is, okay, fine, you don't want to listen to us because we claim the party is yours, the institution is yours, the company is yours, okay, let me leave you with your company, then do what you want to do with it. Then, of course, you'll be sending a message, because I can't be a leader if I don't have followers. Once they're left alone, chances are they'll look at things differently. Then the next one is that followers can stage a protest. We've seen this happening on many occasions. I understand there is one happening as we speak right now, somewhere in Nasrec. So which means that whenever people are not happy about something or they're dissatisfied about something, they will stage a protest against the leader or leaders. And then, of course, the idea will be either to enforce change. If change doesn't happen, it could be to remove the leader. We have recent examples in Sri Lanka, for example. Once people were fed up, they said, no, we've had enough. So the only thing we can do now is to remove our leader. So those are some of the things that then become possible. The next one is that there should be investment in civic education. That is the issue, in fact, that I was tackling in my earlier discussion today, where I was making a presentation, where I was looking at a low voter turnout, and then what could be the reasons for that, and then some solutions. So one of the problems we're having is that we have not invested enough in civic education. There are people who don't know what their rights are. In my earlier discussion, one of the things I did was to start off from a constitutional point of view, and then I look at different legislations that empower the electorate. And then said, once then the legislation is there, the next thing to do is to educate people so that they know what their rights are, and then also what their responsibilities are. So in this case, then my argument here is that once we have civic education, people are going to understand what their rights are, what the leaders' rights are, and then how they can better address leaders who are not basically assisting them, who have become a liability as opposed to being an asset. Then the electoral system could be changed. That is another proposal. The electoral system could be changed so that leaders are elected directly. And this speaks to the point I mentioned earlier on, that because we don't elect a president directly, for instance, in South Africa, you find that there are people who become presidents because their parties are liked by a number of people, are liked by the electorate. So then that becomes a problem. So if we change our electoral system, chances are we may then find the leaders who are liked by the communities and people who vote, leaders who are voted into positions because people see something in them. There are a number of people out there who are doing good work. That is basically the reason why people are proposing that we should have independent candidates, because they believe that there are people who are good out there who can be good leaders, but the problem is they don't belong to any political party. So for as long as they don't belong to a political party, they are not eligible to be voted into positions of power. Then hopefully the bill that is currently being discussed will assist us in that regard. Then the next point is that good leadership could be rewarded as an incentive. So some leaders may not be doing well, but then if they know that they will be rewarded, chances are they might do things better. I made a proposal one time that when I was looking at what I referred to as the president for life pandemic in Africa, where leaders want to remain in office almost indefinitely. And I was saying that maybe there is something we can do to address the situation. One of the things would be to make it clear to the leaders that when you exit the stage as a former head of state, these are the things that will be given to you. And then, of course, we understand that that might be an incentive. And then those who have messed up, as it were, while they were in office, if you promise them that you will not be prosecuted, because in other countries, unlike in South Africa, in other countries, you cannot prosecute a sitting president. And then the only way to protect themselves, these people, these presidents, want to remain in office indefinitely, because for as long as they are in that office, no one is going to touch them. So then if we make it clear that once you leave office, no one is going to page you, no one is going to persecute you, chances are they might be ready to exit the stage. So basically then, in summary, these are the points that I have. Then I can just conclude, we can go to page 9. I can conclude by saying that reflecting on the discussion thus far, there are a couple of things that we can note. One of which is that leadership is a complex exercise than many people imagine it to be. So it's not an easy process. It is also worth noting that this phenomenon has a long history. As we looked at the period between the 1800s up to the 1930s, and then we look at the changes that came in the 1940s and so on and so forth. There are many other changes, of course, in the 1950s and the 1960s, but I deliberately didn't want to go that far. In the main, some leaders either do not understand their role or they pretend not to. The reason why leaders behave in the manner they do, some of them, they genuinely do not understand their role, honestly. And then others do understand their role, but they pretend not to, so they can continue doing the kinds of things that they are doing, sometimes at the detriment of their own organizations that they claim to be protecting. As such, they sometimes claim rights they do not have. I may be a leader, but I don't have absolute rights. But then some leaders will claim rights they don't have, and then they'll start behaving in the manner they do. They become arrogant and all the kinds of things that we have touched on. Civil society, wittingly or unwittingly, give politicians a blank check. The moment we don't question our leaders, the moment we don't confront our leaders, then of course we're giving them a blank check. They will do whatever they want to do, of course, at our own peril, or they're doing that to our disadvantage. Leaders and followers should sing from the same hymn book for leadership to succeed. Leadership cannot succeed if the leader sings this way and then the followers sing a different tune altogether. Certain things that need to happen in order to change the status quo in South Africa. I'm not going to prescribe what should be done, but all I know is that definitely something needs to be done, some of which I've just alluded to. And then, of course, some of the changes would require constitutional amendments, which would be a process. However, the process has to start, and it has to start now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Wow, yeah, sure. I can imagine many of you will agree with me that you felt like the Prof will just continue and continue and continue empowering us. Wow, powerful nuggets. And now you'll realize and you'll notice why we come every Wednesdays here to empower each other. And what we've had tonight, what a lecture on leadership or leadership as it deals with current situation in our country. Thank you so much, Prof. Mngomezulu. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to be jealous, so I would like to open this time, to give this time to you to engage Prof. Mngomezulu, or even to engage each other on these nuggets that he has just shared with us. Let's just see who wants to start. And as I always say, that please don't be those ones who would like to say, I would like to give others a chance. I will be the last one, because we may not get that chance to be last one. So please, let's just shoot and let's see the hands. You can do that by raising your hand, or you can do that by the chat room. I can see that Mrongi say, from your experience, Prof, how long does it take for a nation to see the rewards of a change in leadership? That's the first question. Prof Mngomezulu is from Mrongi, says, from your experience, Prof, how long does it take for a nation to see the rewards of a change in leadership? Does it need to be the leadership of all, or in stages? That's a good question, Mrongi. Thank you very much. Prof Mngomezulu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you very much for the question. Now, honestly speaking, there is no one shoe fits all, because we move from the premise that not all countries are the same, not all situations are the same, and then, of course, in some instances, we'll find that the problematic leaders that we have don't necessarily fit the same category. So they are basically different contexts. And then the other difference also is that our constitutions as individual countries are not necessarily the same. And then the military in other countries is more active than it is here. The other point is that the intelligence is more active in other countries than it is here. If you take a country like Zimbabwe, take a country like Egypt, take a country like Rwanda, there are things you can't say against the sitting head of state. You just can't do it, because if you do so, it's like you're digging your own grave. But then we are lucky here because we can take our politicians to task, and then in some instances, only those who are surrounding the leader or the president will fight on his or her behalf. I had an instance over the weekend where I received a long email from someone who was not happy and who was one of the delegates at the ANC's conference. And then in one sentence, he said that I can see, Mngomezulu, that you really hate the president. Can you please allow us to conclude our conference, and then we can continue hating the president? I didn't respond immediately because I wanted to allow that person to cool off. Once I was sure he had cooled off, I prepared a 10-point response, just trying to educate him that this is how we do politics. And I reminded him that you must have a thick skin at the moment you enter the political terrain, because there will be blows. You must be able to defend yourself, not necessarily to fight. So to answer this question, basically, there is no simple answer, because each situation is different. In some countries, this change comes almost instantly. There was a case in Nigeria, for example, in the history of Nigeria, where you'll find that a leader will be in office for less than 3 months, then it's out. And then in other instances, people are tolerant of their leaders. Say, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and then hopefully it's going to change. Then after some time, no, we've had enough. Then only then do they effect change. It also depends on the leader himself or the leader herself, because some leaders will see that things are not going well, and then they will exit the stage. I'll cite just one example. Colleagues might have seen what happened with Boris Johnson. He could not take the heat. Then he said, okay, I can't take the heat. Let me exit the stage. You will find another leader faced with even worse situations, but will hold on for as long as necessary. So in other words, the differences are on the one side with the leaders, and then on the other side are with the country, and then in other instances are with the electorate or the civil society. Some take long. Like in Sri Lanka, this incident that we've been talking about did not happen overnight. It took time. Then after some time, they said, no, we've had enough. Then they started acting. So it varies from one situation to the other. That will be my response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof Mngomezulu. I see a hand there from Professor Zide, and Prof Zide will be followed by Dr. Chumamangisa. Those are the ones I see at the moment. Prof, over to you, Prof Zide. We can't hear you, Prof. Can you unmute, please? Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Mngomezulu, for a very wonderful, thought-provoking presentation. I've just asked Prof. Majola to make it available to us. My question is a simple one. Dr. Miles Munro says that some politicians are not leaders, but misleaders, because they do not have passion for what they are doing, and they are more concerned about the next election and not the next generation. And so for me, that's a mouthful of a statement. If one does not have passion for what one is doing, then, and of course you touched on it, Prof. Mngomezulu, when you said that lack of knowledge can, for instance, be disastrous. But then let us assume that in the state in which the leadership crisis in South Africa is right now, one could reasonably say that maybe 90% of those in parliament are really not leaders, but misleaders, because they don't have the passion for the job they're doing. They are more concerned about the next election and not about the next generation. Let me close by saying to my question that, for instance, when it is going to be elections, you see them going out there in the streets, kissing babies and dishing out T-shirts, making all kinds of promises. But immediate, and of course they don't have bodyguards, but immediately they are elected into office, they have bodyguards and German cars in blue lights, etc., etc. Now one begins to question the commitment to the country and the commitment to the leadership process. Your comments on that, my professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Should I wait for Potoma, or should I continue?
Maybe let's take Prof, and then you can respond to both of them. Dr. Mangisa, over to you, my brother.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much, Prof. Majola, and thank you for the leadership music that we have rendered, Prof. Mngomezulu. My prelude, I will start like this, that we have surrendered as citizens of this country our natural right to the political elite, with the hope and pray that they will lead us to the promised land. They will lead us to Canaan. However, when you look at the South African context as we speak now, it doesn't matter whether you look at it from whatever angle, Prof. Mngomezulu, things are not doing okay, as we have alluded to. Now, my prelude, therefore, talks to what others would call a social contract. Others would call a social, a social, what is this word? Social compact. Now, things are not where we are supposed to be as a country. We are nowhere closer to the promised land. We are nowhere closer to Canaan. Now, amongst that which we have summarized right at the end of the slide, Prof, what do you think needs to happen for us to be at the promised land? For us to can say, yes, the surrender or the surrendering of our natural right to the political elite, it will take us to where we're supposed to be from a social compact or contract philosophy. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. Majola. Thank you very much, colleagues, for the thought-provoking statements or comments, and then also some questions. Let me start with Prof. Zide. I cannot agree with you and Monroe, more, because the points that he made were quite critical in the sense that for one to be leader, there must be, a change to us as followers. And that change must not be just change, but positive change, which then ties up with Dr. Mangisa's comment or question that our focal point is that we want to go to the promised land. In other words, a leader, I said a leader has to be visionary. A leader who has no vision will definitely not take us to the promised land. So obviously the opposite of being a leader is to be a misleader. But then because of the list of things that I listed, including patronage and a couple of other things, we still follow the misleader, assuming him to be a leader. And that is the problem. And in that case, then it means that we are also responsible for that. I was making this point in another gathering, saying that one of the reasons why there is complacency, for example, in the ANC, which is the governing party, is because they know that even if they don't do things right, the opposition has failed to use the space to project themselves as the alternative. And I started looking at a few political parties. I said, if the ANC has been scoring own goals, committing political suicide, as I call it elsewhere, I was saying then that under normal circumstances, you would expect the DA, which is the official opposition, to do things differently. But then I don't see that happening. The DA has problems of its own. They will tell you that where they govern well. That's not true. Because I live in Cape Town, I know how the situation is in the black townships in Cape Town. They're not properly governed. And at one point, in fact, something terrible happened where houses were being handed over to the people in Khayelitsha. And then some would say, no. This government is wrong. How can you give people give houses to these people who come from the Eastern Cape? These people have homes in the Eastern Cape. Should give houses to the real people of the Western Cape. And then in this case, he was saying the colored people. It reminded me of something that was said by one of the quote-unquote respected gentlemen when I was invited at a Cape Town City Council to talk. And then he made a similar statement. He said, no, you guys can say whatever you want to say, but the reality of the matter is the Western Cape belongs to us colored people. I said, no. You are dividing the nation, and then we are basically sending a wrong message. But to come to this point, some of the leaders will become misleaders, some of them doing this unwittingly. They might not be aware. It's just like if you have done something wrong consistently, I normally say you have normalized an abnormal situation. So the thing is wrong, but because you've done it consistently, you assume this is the right thing. When somebody else, Professor Zide, comes up with something genuine that is supposed to be done, then say, I don't know, Dr. Zide, we are out of order, comrade. And that's the language they would use. So the reality of the matter then is, the line between leaders and misleaders is very thin. It can only be defined by the electorate, provided, of course, the electorate is educated, not just school education, but politically educated. Because if you are politically educated, you can easily distinguish a leader from a misleader, and then we're going to do things differently. And then the point we're making about politicians visiting rural areas is spot on. In fact, yesterday, I was talking to a colleague of mine saying that during elections, you will find these politicians sleeping in shacks, or at least pretending to be sleeping in shacks. And then they wake up and then say, yeah, I can imagine how people are suffering. Yeah, once the elections are over, we're going to build houses. People vote for them and nothing happens. In the next 5 years, we are still in the shack and they're enjoying their lives. And then the last point on that one, Prof. Zide, you find that someone is in your class. You are teaching this person, and then the person barely makes it, getting 50, 52, 55 marks. And then the person completes the degree, and then some don't even complete the degree, they drop out. And then there comes an election. This person is voted into parliament. Believe it or not, with your car, you are going to give this guy away because you'll be having blue lights. Then it's become more important than you. And then, of course, you have no choice. This is your leader. Now we have to, you have to create space for him to rush to the airport, sometimes going to a party. You are going to a funeral or you are rushing to the airport, but you have to give way to this guy who's going to a party. That is the nature of things. So unfortunately, it's the reality we have to face. Now, coming to Dr. Mangesa's comments and question, it's true, we've surrendered the power that we have. That is why I was referring to civic education, saying that unless people are educated about their rights, then of course, they are going to relinquish power and give it to the so-called leaders who are going to use it the way they want. That is the point I was making when I was saying, we've given politicians a blank check, and some of them don't even deserve an inch of what we're giving them, but we're giving them literally everything and then want them to decide our fate. Of course, they will decide our fate. It's just that they're not going to lead us to Canaan. They will lead us somewhere where we don't want to go, simply because they have this power and we've given them that power, wittingly or unwittingly, but that is the reality. Now, the last question from Dr. Mange says, what should we do? It's a number of things that we can do, starting with this civic education. Once people understand what the Constitution says in Chapter 2, what the rights are, what the responsibilities are, then of course you are on the right track, because it means you now know what you are capable of. You now know how to exercise your rights without killing anyone, without fighting anyone. That is the starting point. And then after that, we detach from politicians. We look at substance. If a politician has no substance, why do you continue voting for that person? Because if you do that, you are basically authenticating that misleader and you are making him or her believe that he's a leader, when in fact he's not. Then of course you can kiss Canaan goodbye. We are not going to reach there because this person will not take you there. Two blind people cannot lead one another. You need someone who can see the way and then lead the blind one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much. I see another hand there from Dr. Sipho Potelwa. I don't know. Okay, yes. Yeah, it's Dr. Yeah. From Dr. Potelwa, over to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Prof. Majola. Good evening to the fellow colleagues and good evening to Prof. Mngomezulu for such a profound presentation on leadership. Indeed, we are very empowered, but I've got a very question that perhaps reminds me about the book of Tatungungi Watiyong, Decolonizing the Mind. Now, when decolonizing the mind, he's not putting the perspective of colonial mentality in a Black African person or humanity or human being. He spoke or prophesied the issue of when the liberation comes, what would be our point to decolonize the mind. Now, this presentation is taking me to the mentality of corruption within the rank of the young people in South Africa, where they are conducted and controlled in a particular point. I would please, if Prof. Mngomezulu can just unpack for me, what can be done to the mentality to decolonize this wealthy leadership that is good for point of corruption. Second one, our politics must be realistic. They are not interested in any form or any way in the characteristic and the strategies of academia. Instead, they are stealing these qualifications and desperately honoring themselves. Once now we have to be vigilant in the universities to provide the honorary degrees, because they convert it to their profession where they apply to position of administration, being honored for the position and get the defensive mechanism. The last one, perhaps, is a comment about civil education. That civil education is a broad word that encompasses and empower young people. My question is based on what can we do now after the post-colonial apartheid to decolonize the mind of the young people interested in leadership? Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doc, for these very important comments and questions. They are quite useful indeed. You know, this issue of decolonizing the mind, as you cite Nguki Wationgo, is a very critical one in a number of respects. If you look at it against the background of the hashtag Fees Must Fall in 2015-2016, that then takes us closer to addressing some of the issues that you are referring to, but also raises some critical questions. Because we use certain concepts like a decolonization, we talk about localization, we talk about Africanization, and so on and so forth, on the one hand. Then on the other hand, we talk about internationalization, and we talk about globalization, and some people would use these concepts interchangeably when actually they don't necessarily mean one and the same thing. So the reality of the matter is decolonization, some people think decolonization is just an event, and then we look at we deal with that event, then we are done. When actually it's a more serious process than that. I asked students when I was at UKZN during hashtag Fees Must Fall, when they were saying that, drawing inspiration, of course, from Roads Must Fall. And then I was saying to them, okay, this is Howard College of UKZN. We have a statue of Howard outside. Now tell me, if you were to go out there and destroy or deface that statue, would you then come back and say you have decolonized UKZN? Some said, yes, yes, yes. Others were smart. They didn't respond immediately. Then they said, yeah, it would be one way of doing it. So the point I'm getting at is that Nguki's notion of decolonizing the mind, basically, he was anticipating a situation whereby we'll get our political liberation from our erstwhile colonizers. But then the question would be, what were we going to do with that particular liberation? Even the ANC on this one, they even had a book, Preparing to Govern, because they were thinking that, okay, after some time, we are going to end this oppression and then we'll be on the other side of the table. But then unfortunately, in our case, liberation came unexpectedly because we had been fighting for a very long time, and then we anticipated this particular struggle to be sustained for even a longer period. Unfortunately for us, independence came or liberation came, and then we were confused. We didn't know what to do. That is the reality. That is why we didn't even have the right people in right positions. Our first Minister of Finance had done civil engineering, but we had to put him there, and then we took him to a crash course in the US, a crash course at the London School of Economics, and a couple others, because this liberation came unexpectedly, despite the fact that we had been fighting for so long. So now this decolonization process then would mean, okay, we have inherited this structure, we have inherited this particular governance system. What are we going to do to try and give it an African flavor, as it were? That was never going to happen immediately. And one of the reasons is because we are attached to the capitalist way of doing things. Because if you try to detach from that, then of course you'll be ostracized and will not be able to build your country. The same happens across the continent, whereby after liberation, people got liberation, then they started asking themselves critical questions. How do we then change this Western notion of doing things, including the buildings and other institutions like the Federal University of East Africa located in Tanzania, in Kenya, and then in Uganda. They said we must change these buildings so that they reflect our African outlook. But then of course we cannot change a Great Hall and then make it a Rondavelle. That's practically impossible. But their understanding of decolonization and Africanization was simplistic at that time, when in fact all you needed to do was to go to the curriculum, because that is where you train the future minds. If the curriculum is Eurocentric, you then say, I'm not going to dismiss everything European, but I'm going to put Africa at the center and then use Western notions of understanding things as a reflection to compare. And in fact, that is what I'm doing when I teach international relations theory. For the first term, I only teach African viewpoints, Afrocentricity, Afrocentrism, Ubuntu. Those are the things I do. Only after the first term do I then go to your conventional theories, Western theories, so that at least when students look at those theories, they are able to reflect on their own. So I think this idea then of decolonizing the mind then should come from there, so that we look at it as a process, and then of course we don't necessarily dismiss everything Western, But all we do, we put Africa at the center, and then we use the others as examples to try and make sense of the things that we are doing. The point about what would happen after liberation is very critical. One of my master's students last year did research looking at the ANC in South Africa, and then looking at ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, and then asking the very same question: were these political parties ready, in the liberation movements, were they ready to become governing political parties? That was a critical one, because you had to distinguish between the ANC as the liberation movement and the ANC as the governing party. Those are two different things. Because then, if you are a liberation movement, there are certain things that you do, there are certain codes that you follow, but once you become a governing party, you have to operate differently. And that is a process on its own. That is why people are still trying to find their ground, and it's not easy. And then, as I conclude, Prof. Majola, this issue of honorary degrees, I also have a problem with that. Because some people will get these honorary degrees, and then they'll go out there and throw big parties as if they've earned this through the normal channels that all of us here have done it. I'm not happy about these things. A number of them are getting them day in and day out, by the way. And then they go out there posing as doctors, posing as professors and all of that. And they look big. Even in their own political parties, they claim a higher status now that they have these honorary degrees, when in fact, some of them don't deserve it, to be honest. If you are well connected, you can easily get that honorary degree, because you'll have someone who's going to vouch for you. And then once that person is able to convince others who are deciding, then you end up getting that honorary degree when there are 20 people out there who deserve it more than you do. Now that you have it, then you go around boasting that you are better than those people. Now, the last point about this civil education, yeah, of course, I've already mentioned some points on this one. All I can say, especially as it pertains to the youth, as Doc was saying, we move from the premise that youngsters are less knowledgeable than us as adults. In a way, that is true, because the older you go, the more you learn. And then, of course, youngsters will take time to get to where we are. In a way, that is true. But in some instances, you find that some of these youngsters are more knowledgeable than us. And then the majority of them who are able to use this technology in a fruitful manner are able to amass knowledge, tons of knowledge, more than we have. But only a few of them. The majority of them just want to use technology just for social, things, and that's it. But the reality of the matter is that we can educate our youngsters, provided that we are also educated politically. Because if we're not, then it means we'll become what Prof. Told us about, we'll become misleaders. We'll be at the front, but will not be leaders, will be misleaders of these youngsters. And that basically means that the future generation will be a lost generation due to our own making and nobody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much. I just going to the chat room there. Bongomusa Madlogovu says, Mr. Mngomezulu, of course, it's a Prof Mngomezulu. Your presentation is very profound, especially on paraplegic and egocentric leaders. They are dying like fish, whereby started decaying on head, of which is not good for followers. Wow, paraplegic leaders. Yeah, okay. So there's another one. We learn here, really. And then Aubrey Litsisa says, evening, Prof and colleagues, what is it that would need to happen to transform the electoral system where the nation can vote for individuals instead of a party? And would the political parties even be willing to entertain that idea? Can we take that one, Prof?
Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you very much, colleagues, and for the humbling comments that I'm receiving. Maybe let's start with the paraplegic one. I mean, there's a good concept, and in fact, it's absolutely correct because you have the so-called leaders whom Prof Zete would correctly refer to them as misleaders, and then they become egocentric and paraplegic indeed, and then they claim status they don't deserve. Okay. This one, the transformation of the electoral system, I mentioned it when I was discussing with the DDP and IEC earlier. I was saying that this will be a process because it will call for a constitutional amendment. You cannot just do it anyhow. You'll have to go to the constitutional amendment because if you look at our legislation, chapter 2 will talk about these rights and so on and so forth. There will be, or you look at section 190, which talks about the electoral commission and all of that. There are specific things that are already enshrined in the constitution. And we are told as to how this process will unfold. And then one of them is that you have a right to belong to any political party. You have a right to form a political party. You have a right to basically ask people to come to the party, in other words, mobilize people. You have a right to stand for office, and then if elected, you have a right to occupy that office. So these things are stated there, but then because we're using this party system, two things will have to happen. One, we'll have to amend the constitution, and then two, we'll also have to amend our electoral act. Those are the two pieces of legislation that will have to be attended to. Otherwise, there is no way that we can do it. That is the simple answer I can provide, Prof. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my professor. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time now to give Prof Mngomezulu the opportunity to give us his parting shots or closing remarks. Then I will close the session after that. Over to you, Prof.
No, thank you very much, Prof. Majola. No, colleagues, there isn't much that I need to say, except that, first of all, I'm deeply humbled by the invitation to address colleagues here, because I do know that you are doing a sterling job in what you are doing. I was talking to Dr. Songela the other day, saying that I really appreciate what she did, linking me up with the Prof. Majola, and I've learned a lot in the process. From the questions, from the comments, I really learned a lot. I really appreciate that. And then also, secondly, just to also appreciate that we are reading from the same hymn book. We are not like our politicians, in the sense that the questions that I'm receiving, the comments that I'm receiving, the points that I'm making, they are all in sync, which means that we are headed to the right direction. All I can say, Prof. Majola and colleagues, that please continue doing the great job. And then if I do find a chance, I'll join you once in a while. It's just that, as I said, my schedule is getting more and more hectic. Otherwise, please keep up the good job. We are doing a sterling job, colleagues. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Mangisa, is it a point of exigency there before I close?
Yes.
We're going back to our SRC's days. Point of exigence, comrade.
Yes. Exigency. Thanks, Prof, for allowing me, man. It's burning. It's burning in me. You know, in our parliament, you know, there is proportional representation, and the question was asked of you know, whether this you know, political system will ever take us where we want to be, as far as another political system, you know, the independent political system. Now, the question that I want to check with Ubabu Dlakatla, looking at this proportional representation that we have, you know, in our politics, is there a hope that there will ever be, you know, a change in this electoral political system that we have, Prof? Or we are just dreaming? will it ever, will it ever be there? Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thanks, Doc. I'll answer this question very succinctly. One, I don't envisage a situation whereby we'll have one party getting a 2/3 majority. It happened, it was an event, and it's gone for good. And the reason is very simple. The number of political parties is increasing in each and every election. And then to make it worse, we now have independent candidates. In all likelihood, they will be also contesting in future in the general election, that is national and provincial government election, as they've started contesting at local government level. Because for you to do all the changes, including this changing from this PR system, the proportional representation system, you need to change the constitution. And given the number of political parties that we have, you can draw examples from failure to pass that amendment of section 25 of the constitution. So if you were to come and say you want to change this PR system, chances are there will be resentment, or even if there is no outright resentment, you will fail to get the 2/3 majority, which is a requirement for you to make any constitutional amendment. So that is the reality we're faced with. And then, of course, the system is not as good as other people think it to be. You have one seat, and then you make a lot of noise just with that one seat. Yesterday, I was saying that in some instances, you find that in a municipality, you'll fail to get an outright winner, and then the person or the party that is on the verge of winning but needs one seat to win will come to you and ask for that one seat. You come with one seat and say, I'll give you the seat on one condition, I get the deputy mayoral position, or I become the deputy president of the country. We have no choice, we have to do that. So this PR system in a way is not helping, but I don't see it changing anytime soon for the reasons I've stated. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you very much, Dlakadla. Thanks, my brother. You always empower us and you always give us the best. And thank you so much. And again, we'll be we'll be coming back to you because obviously we are here to empower each other. Always say the 90% of colleagues who are here are our past speakers. We are here to empower each other. We are here to learn from each other, and which is very, very important. So thank you so much for empowering us tonight. And thank you so much for availing yourself in your busy schedule, as I said earlier on. We've learned a lot, as we always do. And again, just to say to those colleagues who have joined us for the first time, please, we can see now, or you can taste what makes us to come here every Wednesdays is exactly this. There's no way you'll attend this session and you don't learn anything. There's no way you will attend this session and you don't take anything home, or you'll always learn, and that is why we are here every Wednesdays. So thank you so much, colleagues. Let me just say that, yes, we can share the link with you, but the best way to get this is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will get these videos and you'll see all other past videos that we've had in the past. So there you'll have an opportunity and a privilege to really watch all other videos that we have had in the past. So please do subscribe. You get then the channel, there is a subscribe button, so just press that one and you will get the notifications all the time we post something there. Even this video will be posted there, so whether really we send you the link or the recording, but the best way is just to be the subscriber there, so that you can get these things all the time and every time. And you can always go back, as I'm saying. Even the last week's video is there with Edward Kisweta, so you can just checking that. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have learned so much, and we'll meet again next week, Wednesday, as we always do. By the way, our annual conference is coming next month in August. Next week, we'll be able to give you the details, but we've got our annual conference. As you know, that we had a wonderful, great conference last year, and then we are having another one this year with a powerful, speakers, and also we'll be launching our book as we did last year. We've got another book that we'll be launching this year. It's called Women in Leadership, Breaking the Glass Ceiling, with powerful and esteemed contributors who have written that book. So yeah, so many things are coming, great stuff are coming. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you again next week. May God bless you. This session is urgent now. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
colleagues.
Prof. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, audience. Thank you, Prof.